Okay, welcome to the final webinar in the week of webinars. And what we're going to do today is talk about something a little less technical, but wildly important for people that are in the technology industry, including, of course, the wireless LAN and Wi-Fi and general wireless community. And that is mentoring. And so we're going to do this from a couple of perspectives. First of all, I'm going to be talking about mentoring a bit for just a few minutes. And then we're going to bring on a guest who's with us today. His name's Jonathan Lohr, and he'll be coming on a little bit later, and I'll introduce him then and let him talk to you a little bit. And we'll just both get on video here and just have a conversation about mentoring and what's involved in that and why it can be important for our careers and get some real practical examples of that. The goal today is to do two things. It is to, first of all, help encourage you to be a mentor, and anyone can be, regardless of where you're at in your historic adventure in your career, and to encourage you to also be a mentee, because anyone can be that as well. And we'll really focus on the value that that actually brings to folks within the community and the industry at large. So, of course, you know me, Tom likes history, right? So where in the world did this concept of mentoring come from? Well, it came from a real person, okay, maybe a fictional character that was a mentor. And this is the source of mentoring. The reality is that mentoring comes from Homer's Odyssey. So Odysseus had to go off to the Trojan War. He had a son. He trusted his son, Telemachus, to his friend named Mentor. And he asked Mentor to watch over him, to counsel him, to teach him, and so forth. And from there came our concept of mentoring. And it's really quite interesting to note that it's been around for so long. And that's where mentoring comes from. And yes, I personally created these graphics. I spent a long time generating them, utilizing, of course, artificial intelligence. So it's just beautiful that it actually gets text right. It only got one thing wrong, where it says he entrusts his son Telemachus to his wise friend Mentor. It said he entrusts his so. It left off the N. So I grabbed the N from the word Trojan and put it down with the word son to fix that one textual problem that it had. But other than that, it did pretty good. Okay, so let's talk about this. Mentorship versus apprenticeship. These get confused sometimes, and they are a little bit different technically, but you know, whichever one you want to call it, I'm fine with that. But the key thing here is that mentorship is a very broad relationship-based form of guidance focused on overall growth with career and psychosocial support. And it's usually focused within an area of specialization. Apprenticeship is different primarily in that it is a job-based concept. And so it's a domain-specific training pathway that includes supervised work. And that part right there is the part that's not usually involved in what we think of as mentoring. It has milestone definitions, competence evaluations and goals, and direct instruction for skill mastery toward a defined trader role. There's something called multiple or multi-role mentorship in the research literature that actually addresses this, because many times mentors, they might end up being asked to not only mentor someone, but assess their progress formally, where they're doing various types of assessments with them and things like that to try to understand how their progress is going, which kind of brings in this apprenticeship role. So historically, when we think of apprenticeship, we think of the age-old one that people tend to think of as a blacksmith, right? From the olden days. And the concept there is that the apprentice comes in, and maybe at first they're just helping clean the shop, and then eventually they're stoking the fires, and then maybe they're preparing some of the metal, and over time they take on more and more responsibilities until they themselves have become a blacksmith. So that's what we think of as apprenticeship, that kind of long-term process of learning, a way to learn a trade instead of going to what we today call a college or university, right? And so that was apprenticeship of old. But what if we thought about combining them? And I thought of this term apprenticeship, but then when I began to research it, I found out that someone has it trademarked. So I've got their TM in here. It's not a registered trademark, but it is a trademark that they have. But the concept, the idea is to bring the two together where they apply to what we want to do. So I think some things from these two concepts of mentorship and apprenticeship that we can indeed bring into play are, of course, it's relationship based from mentorship. It's guidance for overall growth. It includes career support and psychosocial support. And so that's what we pull from mentorship. And then from apprenticeship, domain constraints. Think about that. When we talk about mentoring someone in the Wi-Fi community, we're talking about helping them on their journey to expertise and professional development related to working in the Wi-Fi space or the wireless industry. And then milestone definitions. Maybe we can take it a little bit further where we can offer to help them set some goals and milestones for their journey to help them move along that path. And then we might even include some competency evaluation and goals as well in that process if they want to work with us at that level. So the point is, while they're not working for us per se in most of these mentorship kind of roles, we can plug in whatever they want to do and that we're willing to help them do in order to move along their journey. So the final thing that I would say might be beneficial in some cases is direct instruction. Maybe you can't give them a 40 or 50 hour class on some topic, but that doesn't mean you can't be involved in direct instruction where you're teaching them some concepts and ideas related to the domain constraint in which you're operating. Now, there are also alternate mentoring structures we don't want to forget about. For example, there's peer mentoring. And this is where that one is not necessarily further along in their career than the other, but maybe they have knowledge in certain areas that the other lacks and vice versa. And so there's peer mentoring as well. And then there's reverse mentoring. This is not where you unmentor someone, though sometimes that is needed if they've had a bad mentor. But this is where normally when we talk about it, it's the young mentoring the old or the newcomers mentoring the long timers. So normally when we think of mentoring, we think of someone, maybe like myself who's bald, or someone who's so fortunate in a community like Keith Parsons to be older than me and yet have a nice head of hair, even though it's turned silver. So some people get to hold on to their hair, but you can look at other signs. Trust me, he's looking old too. It's not just me. The point is that people that have been around a while can be mentored by newcomers too. They bring new insights and ideas. Here's a way to think of it. Think about the time when we bring in our grandchildren to teach us how to use one of these new social media systems that we know nothing about, right? That's reverse mentoring. And so this is something that is very important because there's an assumption that wisdom only comes with age. Wisdom comes with participation and activity in something. And the reality is that sometimes people younger than us have more wisdom than us in some areas, and we can be mentored by them. And then you have the concept of network mentoring or a constellation of mentors. This is what I like to think of the Wi-Fi community like, or the wireless community, expanding it even beyond just Wi-Fi. It's like a constellation of mentors. You can be mentored by multiple people when you're participating in a community. And those of you who've heard me talk about career management and things like that, I talk all the time about the most important thing that we can really do to grow our expertise beyond the fundamental two items, which is determine what expertise you want to develop, and then create a development plan that includes deliberate practice. So once those two things are established, the most important additional thing that you can add is not hours of practice. That's a misconception. The old 10,000 hour rules is a myth with a misunderstanding of the research literature. The most important thing you add is community. That's the third element. So the first element, what is the area of expertise? The third element, a plan of deliberate practice. And the third element, get into a community. And that is absolutely key. And that community becomes your constellation of mentors, which includes in the end direct mentorship, peer mentoring, and reverse mentoring. All of it's in there when you get into that constellation of mentors. So this is some really, really important stuff to think about related to mentoring. And with that said, I'm going to kind of not talk as much, and I'm going to bring Jonathan into the picture here so we can have a discussion about this mentoring process. So welcome,
Hello.
Jonathan.
I appreciate that, Tom. We practiced that dramatic effect of me coming on camera like a talk show, so I hope that was worth it.
Yes,
I think it was. I think it was worth it.
welcome. And so let me introduce you to the community. There are 60 or 70 of us gathered together here today, but many more will be introduced to you when this gets onto the CWNP TV YouTube channel. For those of you that don't know, a lot of colleges and universities have mentoring programs that they use where as students are going through their academic progress, they engage with mentors in the industry and things like that. And that's how Jonathan and I actually met. It turns out Jonathan also knows some other people in our community that you all know as well. And so he already had some links into the community, and I just happened that we ended up getting linked up for mentoring through his educational process, and that ended some time ago as far as the formal mentoring relationship. But I've sought out ways to continue it with him. And Jonathan is not necessarily at this time certain that he wants to be a Wi-Fi expert or work in the wireless industry. He's very interested in security, and he's just beginning to build his career. And that's an important thing to keep in mind with mentoring. So we're not always just mentoring people in our domain expertise, because if you've been around a while, you have a lot of knowledge about getting ahead in technology in general, and not just about your domain expertise. But Jonathan, tell us a little bit about your background and what made you decide, when you're already an old man, to begin moving into doing the technical work in technology instead of just working maybe on the other side of the business. So tell us what the other side was and how you decided to get into technology.
Absolutely. I appreciate that introduction, Tom. And yeah, it's been great getting to know you over the past year and a half, and looking forward to that journey continuing. So a little bit about my journey. Been in the technical field roughly a decade or so. I got into it pretty much right out of school. I went to NC State, but a lot of it was spent on the kind of customer facing, being that bridge to communicate with organizations and companies to solve their problems with software solutions platforms. So a lot in the software as a solution industry, whether that was healthcare, whether that was education, a lot of time spent there. And when I was starting out in that sector, and even on the customer side, there seemed to be a lot more emphasis from organizations to teach everyone, not have IT siloed, not have developers siloed. When you were solving these problems, you were very much involved in all four of those phases of discovery all the way through implementation and maintenance. So that was what was very exciting, and kind of what I drilled down into as a direction I wanted to go. And kind of subconsciously was enjoying that. And just anecdotally, and I'm sure other individuals have experienced it too over the past, I'd say 3 or 4 years, certainly since the pandemic, that that hockey stick spike of everyone wanting a platform, technology being at the forefront, this being very much an inflection point. There was a lot more specialization, even in kind of a sales capacity, right? It seemed like things were getting siloed, and you were literally just trying to churn and burn. And again, I thankfully knew that that wasn't necessarily the specialty I wanted to dig into as much. What I enjoyed again was solving problems. I enjoyed learning the technology side. So again, just and we'll get more into this, but kind of the mentorship side really dug in. So I wanted to find individuals like yourself who very much we're in on that side. We're on the innovation, forward thinking, but knew all the underlying technologies, whether it was networking, security, programming. So I joined organizations like ISSA, Information Systems Security Association, Cloud Security Alliance, looking into Wake Technical Community College here, which we both live around RTP, which is what led to getting introduced to Tom and really digging in more. So that journey has very much led me here. It's been a very exciting few years. I've got a lot of great experience, gotten education, obviously having Tom Carpenter as a mentor where he does course writing and things of that nature was very helpful as far as curating that journey, because once you start looking out, it's overwhelming. It certainly can be, and I'm sure again we've all experienced that. Like you want to know, but you don't want to spend that 1,000 hours just kind of kicking kicking that rock down the road, if you will. So that's certainly where I'm at, and I think that's exactly where I want to stay as far as having that learning mindset, making sure that I'm always trying to stay innovative, but always checking in with mentors like Tom and making sure I stay excited. And it's just it's always easier with community. No one does it alone.
Yeah, absolutely. And by the way, here's a perfect example of reverse mentoring. All week long, when I've talked about the CWNA 109 digital edition product, I've gone through several times on the days, and I have shown the fact that we have white papers and vendor documents and things like that for each chapter, and YouTube videos for each chapter. And I keep saying, we have gathered, we have aggregated, and I kept trying to come up with the word that I wanted to use, and it would not come to my brain. And you just used it. So folks, all week, the word I've been trying to come up with is curate. We curated the materials.
Gotcha.
For some reason in my old brain, it would not come to me. But see, this is the benefit of reverse mentoring. Young brains work better. And that's very, very helpful to us. All right. Well, that's really cool. And so as you can probably all tell, Jonathan has a strong interest in security. So a lot of his focus has been on studying that part of it. And he's actually going to be helping us out with some of our work in the projects related to security, particularly the CSAE that's coming up. So he's going to be helping us with some of the development of that and things of that sort. And he's mentioned some things that make me want to just chime in here and encourage those of you that have been around the industry for a while of some ways you can get involved. So contact your local community colleges or state colleges that might have technology degree programs, and find out if they have mentorship programs and volunteer to be involved if you can. The other thing is that they often have boards that they will assemble to help guide them for developing their curriculum for different tracks through the educational process. And you can get involved in that as well. Because if you've been frustrated working in the industry saying, higher education is not always giving us everything we need, well, there are a couple of ways you can help. One, you can help provide that as some type of a solution post higher education. But two, you can go to higher education and say, I want to be involved. I want to help you in any way I can to have graduates that are beneficial and valuable for industry. So those are some great ways to get connected. Okay, so what do you think, Jonathan? We're going to go right down to an important question. So what do you think, based on what you've seen so far, the tech community can do to be more welcoming? I think we try to be welcoming, but what do you think are some things we can do to say to outsiders wanting to come in, hey, this is a welcome space and we love newcomers and you're welcome here?
That's a good question. I believe it honestly goes across not just tech community, but really any community to be more welcoming, is to understand what's happening, what brought those people here, right? So this is very much an inflection point in technology. It can be terrifying, but if you flip it, the other side of that coin is excitement, right? So a lot of people are brought, easy example, to technology, to CWNP through like AI, right? So doing a little research even on the tech community side, what's bringing them here? So having that easy top of funnel inflection point materials, if you will. So it's like, well, so you're here because you want to understand what Copilot can do for your organization, understand how to use Perplexity, which was great on Tuesday. I definitely learned a lot of things. I'm going to switch up where I spend my money on AI thanks to that. And then just cultivate that, right? Understand that they might be here for a longer amount of time, um, but embrace them all the same, right? Whether it's they know every song to every album, or they just know the hits, they'll come back. But if you give them that first initial great experience, give them some action items, give someone some materials, and then just be curious up front, right, about them, because as we all know, and I'm very obviously recently into this space of getting back into something that is uncomfortable. That first step is terrifying, right? Just going in and saying, "Hey, I'm interested, but I don't know exactly what I'm interested in." So giving them a quick win, giving them some abilities, something they can chew on, and then hopefully, the people who are really interested and really want to get into it will dig deeper, and then you've got maybe someone for life. Maybe they'll again do that reverse mentorship, and they'll bring someone else in. So understanding it's a trickle effect, and if you do a little work on the front end, it'll really elevate the tech community in general. It's a lot easier to get organizations to adopt these. Again, like you said, I've done a lot on the security side. It's a lot easier to get organizations to understand tech security when they understand technology a lot better and what it's doing. So it's not siloing, right? IT is not a department. It's like every organization needs technology now. You cannot escape it. Everyone needs a computer, transactions, information. All generations are now here. So it's knowing that it's fine. It's going to change, but that doesn't mean we have to change. And again, that's not just the tech community. I think that's everyone, and that's anything. So like I said, it's exciting, but it is terrifying. So knowing both sides of that.
Absolutely. So, and I want you to be completely honest about this, even though everybody knows that I've been at least one of your mentors. What is the most challenging thing when you're working with old bald people or old gray-haired people? Because many of them are women who are also fortunate and don't necessarily usually lose their hair.
Well, I'm so glad you asked, Tom. So no, it's has its ups and downs. I gotta take some time. At least you get to get up and you're good to go. No, I'd say the most challenging thing, and again, not to just let technology off the hook. It's knowing that's a person, right? You have to be honest with a mentor, or well, I like to think mentorship is in a good way, especially when you're getting into an industry, as an opportunity to practice how you would meet with a professional in the office, right? So, I mean, it's negotiating up front. What's your schedule like? What are your expertise? What do I want out of this, and building from there, getting those first two steps. Obviously you want to know the result, right? For me, it's getting down the road, getting into organizations where I can make more of an impact, but that starts with a solid foundation. So, I think that's challenging, especially the older you get and the more of a quote unquote adult that you are. It's being vulnerable and on both sides, like saying, "Hey, I don't know," or just bugging someone to make sure that you keep up with that schedule, with those expectations. And again, it's okay sometimes. Life happens, but hopefully expanding your footprint within. Like, I mean, since we've known you've directed me to many different people and resources. So not putting too much pressure on each other, I think can be the most challenging part, because I like to think we're both good people and want to help each other. But there's days where you're like, I got to catch up on stuff, or that's fine. I think it was the other day we needed to do a test run, and I completely forgot I had something to get to, and you were good enough to be flexible. So it can definitely go both ways. But yeah, I'd say it's the most challenging part is just making sure you have a plan on both sides and then sticking to it.
Yeah. It's interesting because, one of the challenges I know in working with me is getting time. just finding that time when that person's going to be available. And the biggest thing, and publicly apologizing to you, that frustrated me in our relationship, specifically the mentoring part connected to your higher education, because I kind of look at it in two ways. I'm not going to get involved in something like that and say, when I'm done, I don't care to ever hear from you again, and we're not involved. No, to me, we become friends through that process, and I'm still there to help people. So it was very disappointing when I had an issue with my dog that kept me from being able to get to your graduation, because that was the thing. Of all the things we did together, I was looking forward to that the most. And then I didn't actually get to go. And that was a real, as we said when I was young, a real bummer. And missed out on that. But, it is that kind of thing. And as a mentor, I think from the other side of it, you do realize there are some people that you may start a mentoring relationship with, but you realize early on that it's just not really a connection that is going to be beneficial to both parties. Not every personality works with every other personality. And it's best in those situations to, find a slow, gradual exit plan rather than just forcing yourself to continue as a mentor when you're only hurting the person and hindering them by not being able to give them the real value that you can provide if you had that good relationship. Which leads me to the question of what is the value that mentors bring. So can you think of I guess a good way to formulate this question would be, can you think of some good advice that they gave you that at the time maybe you didn't think it was that good? And it can be any mentor you've had, but they shared something with you, and initially maybe you were skeptical about it, or you're thinking, I don't know if they're right about that or not. And later they turned out to be right, even though many times a mentor might be wrong about some of their advice. But they gave you advice, and you were skeptical, but then you found out, yeah, this is right.
So many, but I think it comes back to you're questioning yourself every day, and like you said, time is valuable. So it's knowing in the tech industry, you need that project experience, you need that real world, because we learn by doing. It's kind of funny. Without this advice, you and I would not be here right now. So the most recent one would be doing the Sentinel program that was ended up being great with Wake Tech. It was a first iteration, inaugural, if you will, work-based learning program that had certifications and different things tied in. So if anyone out there knows someone who is interested in breaking into it and getting real experience, it's something certainly in the Raleigh area. Obviously, don't want you to have to commute too far. But yeah, that's certainly something you can do. But yeah, I'd say that was certainly one, and it was through some individuals, Jen and JD, that we know. They mentioned that, and I applied, and it was great. It had its ups and downs, but without that, I certainly wouldn't have certain certifications. Wouldn't I've had the work opportunities I've had, and it's starting to open more and more doors, and just brought out a lot more confidence that, I can manage and juggle a lot of things while getting real world experience. I was able to go out and work for several organizations in the area and do project-based work through that program, as well as through opportunities on my own. But yeah, no, at that point, my instinct was to maybe go and do a little more of a grad school route, right? I did some coursework through Villanova University, and I thought, well, maybe this can lead into a more intensive master's degree. Those can be a little pricier, and when you're figuring it out, certainly a little terrifying too. But again, I knew I needed more mentorship, so again, it's very ironic or great how the world works. That's what we're talking about today, but that was the goal, and that's absolutely what I got out of it. So yeah, I'd say doing a program that there was a first, and hopefully continues in some capacity even around the country, because I think that is we'll say alternative education that needs to happen, not just being in a classroom studying, siloing, but really getting out and doing that work. So yeah, I'd say that was the most recent example, and it certainly has paid dividends.
Excellent. So, we're all receivers and givers. And so, we may be in a mentor role with one person and in a mentee with another. We may be in a mentee role with a person in one context, but with that same person, we're in a mentor role in another context. So what has your experience so far in your life been mentoring other people, whether it's in technology or didn't you weren't you a big BB guy early in your life, playing some basketball?
Basketball guy. I was, yeah. Obviously, I'm sitting down. I'm a little taller. That's always a weird, like, shameless thing, but it will be if you all meet me in person. I cannot get around that. I am
And
taller.
I can attest to that because I had never met you in person. We'd been doing mentoring, doing it all
Mhm.
through online video. And then we had an in-person meet at the college. And you walked in, I was already seated, and you walked in, and I didn't stand up when you came in. And you sat down by me, and we're talking. And then we stand up to leave, and I'm like, because I'm 6 foot and like half an
Yeah, no,
inch. And
well
so
above average.
I'm like looking up and saying, huh, this guy's pretty tall. So I see why he did basketball.
Yeah, if nothing else, it was so people can't ask me like, "Did you?" It's like, yes, yeah. At least you checked that off. Yeah, no, actually, I'm glad you mentioned that. That is definitely an area. I did some mentorship even into my 20s and professional life. Like anything, back up. So basketball does have a shelf life, right? Your knees, your back, your everything. Unless you're LeBron James, you probably are done playing some high level basketball in your early 30s. It happens. Not to say you can't play longer and do other things. I certainly still try to in leagues around town. But as I had friends who were leaving college, leaving playing college basketball or some professional life, that was a tough transition for them. Just even like me trying to transition from one kind of sector to the other. It's like, how do you frame that value and the things you learned being a professional athlete or being a college, a high level athlete, and frame that so that you can get onto that next stage. So I actually worked with the organization, they're still around, called No Bro. And we did things like help guys craft resumes, do a little career advice, and like any good mentorship, it's just kind of sharing a reality and being like, it's okay, like it's a journey, you'll get there, but here are some good first steps, and we'll, this place you can come back to. So yeah, that was certainly very rewarding. Still talk to a lot of those individuals. And again, it's something, they've come back even later in life and been like, cool, I started doing this. I know you have worked in these sectors. How do we get that going even more? And that's been cool. And then, kind of, you spoke to it earlier, just that reverse mentoring as I've been, with that Sentinel program at Wake Tech and speaking to individuals who are in a similar stage to me, successes that I've had, or even ones that I'm kind of still feel like I'm tripping over myself. We talk and say, hey, this worked. What worked for you? To hopefully speed up the process of kind of continuing to get your foot in the door and strengthen your skill set within the tech space of where we're at. So yeah, no, I think mentorship is huge. And it's been great, and I want to
Yeah, I
continue
agree. And
getting uncomfortable.
that's something that we put a lot of focus on in our particular community within IT. There are many, many different sub communities of information technology and information systems. You get into the programming world, and you've got the general programming community, then you've got the Python community and the C++ community and the Go community. And then in networking, you have the networking community, but then that breaks down into wireless and IoT and industrial networking. And so you've got all these different sub communities that are out there. And I think one of the things that in the Wi-Fi space that has been really well developed over the years has been this sense of community that fosters mentoring. And that's a really important thing to us. And I'll tell you, you may not realize it because you might not be watching the chat as we're discussing, but you've actually been introduced to this community because they are talking about your lore. They say that there's much lore around Jonathan. They are mentioning the fact that
Like, dude, I've seen it.
that they're mentioning the fact that some people want to be mentored on how to be taller.
Mm.
And then others have chimed in and said that in the Middle Ages, they had some solutions for that. So welcome to our community. You can see we
Yeah,
have
it's
a bit of a
exciting.
dad sense of humor, it seems like.
The jokes are the best.
And they're definitely inviting you in. And for those that are here today, I'll let you know that we're going to be starting in September, probably the last part of September. We'll do our first one. But we're going to be starting a live stream where Jonathan and I just get together and talk about what's going on in the tech space. We'll talk a little bit about tech in general and about wireless specifically. And we're just going to do a live stream chat. No real plan, no real listed agenda other than just we'll know going in. We're going to talk about a few topics. And we're just going to discuss that and have that for you once a month. And that will be probably in the evening time in the Eastern time zone where both Jonathan and I are. But of course, we'll always archive it for you on CWNP TV so that you can access that as well. So, Jonathan, I just want to say, appreciate you coming on and talking with me about this mentoring process a little bit today and give you a chance to say anything else you want to say before we get into some closing remarks.
No, I appreciate it. It's truly been an honor, and it's exciting to dig more into it. I've got several CWNP courses and certifications that are certainly on the docket. So like I said, excited to learn more. Excited for the live stream. We've talked about it for a month or two. So definitely tune into that and listen to it, whether you're driving into work or need a little break. If you've hopefully enjoyed our interaction here, you can get more of it. So let you all get to your weekend. Hopefully everyone has a good holiday weekend. Talk to y'all soon.
And by the way, the fact that Jonathan sounds so good is because he's got a good mentor who gave him a 75th anniversary Electro Voice RE20 microphone so that he would sound great online. That's what you do as a mentor, folks. All right. You give your mentees things that will improve their lives and help them be successful. Seriously, though, Jonathan, thanks a lot for joining us. And I look forward to seeing a lot more of that microphone on our live streams in the future. So thanks for joining in today.
Yes, sir. Appreciate it. Talk to everyone soon.
All right. And with that, what I want to do is I want to wrap up with my quote. I've given you quotes most days this week, right? So this one comes from Isaac Newton in a letter to Robert Hooke, where he said, if you have seen further, it is by standing on the shoulders of giants.